Today we are discussing the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. It is probably the oldest book that we have discussed in this channel so far. While we usually look at vintage paperbacks from the last century, this text takes us back thousands of years. We are stepping out of the modern era entirely. We are engaging with a message that has survived civilizations, wars, the rise and fall of countless empires. The name itself gives us a clue about its nature. Brihad means great and Aranyaka means forest. It is the great forest book. In ancient times, when a person wanted to move beyond the superficial concerns of society, they would go to the forest. The forest represents a place where the noise of the world is replaced by the silence of nature. This book was meant for that silence. It was meant for people who had decided that the standard answers provided by society were no longer enough. As we sit with this text, we have to realize that it is not a book to be read quickly. It is a vast territory. It is dense, complex, and at times overwhelming. But it remains the foundation for almost everything that came after it in the realm of philosophy. It does not offer a set of stories to believe in. Instead, it offers a method of inquiry. If you ask me to summarize the whole book in 3 words, I would say this: observe the self. This sounds simple, but the Brihadaranyaka explains that it is the hardest thing a human can do. Most of our lives are spent in a state of external observation. We observe our careers, our families, our belongings, and our social standing. We are constantly looking outward to find our identity. This book argues that this is a fundamental error. It suggests that everything we see outside is a reflection or a distraction. The text introduces the concept of the Atman, or the true self. It teaches that the self is not the body, because the body changes and eventually fades. It teaches that the self is not the mind, because thoughts are like clouds that pass through the sky. If you're not your body and you're not your thoughts, then who are you? The book answers this by telling us to become the witness. Observation is the tool used to separate the real from the unreal. The book tells us to observe the self. It is asking us to find that part of us that remains constant from childhood to old age. It is the silent observer behind our eyes. Finding that observer is the central theme of this entire journey. It asks us to stop participating in the drama of our lives for a moment and simply watch how the drama unfolds. A central passage in this text explains the mechanics of how we move through the world. It tells us that we are what our deep driving desire is. As our desire is, so is our will. As our will is, so is our deed. As our deed is, so is our destiny. This is a profound psychological observation. It suggests that our life is not a series of random events, but a logical progression starting from an internal seed. This connects deeply with the philosophy of Arthur Schopenhauer and his concept of the world as will. Schopenhauer argued that a blind, restless will is the fundamental reality of the universe. The Brihadaranyaka agrees, but it takes it a step further. It tells us that by observing this desire, we can understand the trajectory of our entire life. If your deep desire is rooted in the external world, your will and your deeds will follow that path, leading to a destiny tied to temporary things. But if the desire is to know the self, the will shifts. The deed becomes the act of meditation and observation. The destiny then becomes liberation. This book is the answer to the question of what a human should do. It says we must audit our desires because they are the blueprints of our future. The text describes the true nature of the self as being free from fear, free from desire, and free from evil. When we are caught up in our daily lives, we are often driven by these things. We fear loss, we desire gain, and we struggle with the consequences of our actions. But the Upanishad argues that the observer is untouched by these things. Just as a mirror is not changed by the image it reflects, the self is not changed by the experience of the body. This is where we see a connection to the Jungian idea of the individual being the datum of reality. Carl Jung argued that the individual consciousness is the only thing we can truly know. The world only exists for us because we are here to perceive it. The Brihadaranyaka takes this to the ultimate conclusion. All worlds arise from the self. This means that your perception of the world is entirely dependent on the state of your internal observer. If the observer is clouded by desire, the world looks like a place of scarcity. If the observer is clear, the world is revealed as a manifestation of the self. This puts the responsibility of existence squarely on the individual. We are not just living in a world, we are projecting a world. To understand the weight of this observation, we can look at a central dialogue in the book involving the sage Yajnavalkya and his wife Maitreyi. When the sage decides to leave his worldly life, he offers his possessions to his wife. She asks if wealth could make her immortal, and he admits that it cannot. Maitreyi then says she has no use for what which cannot lead her to the truth. This is the moment the book answers the question of what a human should do. It tells us that our primary duty is to seek that which is permanent. Yajnavalkya explains that we do not love people or things for their own sake, but for the sake of the self that resides within them. Every attraction we feel is actually a search for the light of consciousness reflected in the world. As we conclude our look at this ancient text, we have to address its most famous prayer. It is a request to be led from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, and from death to immortality. This is the ultimate goal of the Observe the Self directive. This book is the answer to the question of what a human should do. It does not tell us to change the world. It tells us to change the way we see the world by changing our understanding of the one who sees it. It tells us that the world we see is a veil and that the truth lies behind it. This is the oldest book we have discussed, and it might be the most challenging. It asks us to stop looking for fulfillment in things that are destined to pass away. It asks us to sit in the great forest of our own minds and watch our thoughts until they settle. A human should realize that they are not the roles they play or the objects they own. A human should realize that they are the infinite self. This book is the manual for that realization. It is a reminder that the answers we seek are already here, waiting to be observed. Thank you for joining me for this exploration of the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. I hope this encourages you to look past the surface of your own life and begin the quiet work of observation.